everyone. Welcome to Rewildology, the podcast that explores conservation, travel, and rewilding the planet. I'm your host, Brooke Mitchell Norman, conservation biologist and adventure traveler. Let's face it, technology has become an inseparable part of our lives, with social media being at the center of our attention. Young or old, come on, everybody's grandma's on Facebook nowadays. We all spend several hours a week consuming content and connecting with others. While the verdict is still out on whether or not phones and social media are detrimental to our health, there is no denying the power that these items possess. So, how can we as conservationists, nature enthusiasts, or biologists leverage technology for both scientific inquiry and entertainment? That, my friends, is what we're going to learn today. In this episode, I'm sitting down with Dillon Jones, a graduate student at San Diego State University who is studying the evolutionary history of herpetofauna in Middle America. And quick definition, herpetofauna are reptiles and amphibians found in a particular region or time period, which you'll also soon learn more about. He also uses social media as a powerful science communication tool and has reached Instagram influencer status. Dillon and I obviously connected online after I found his engaging videos and decided to reach out and say hi. We've been Insta buddies ever since. Dillon and I discussed so much it's almost difficult to recap, but a few highlights include the huge potential of his herp evolutionary study for advising conservation priorities, the why and how of him becoming an Instagram influencer with many tips and tricks, and a huge rant session between us about the broken wheel of academia, because why not? Today is also American Frog Day, which is why I'm releasing this episode this week. If you dig the conversation, add this episode to your Instagram story and tag Rewildology and Dillon the Biologist with hashtag American Frog Day. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to never miss a future episode. All right, friends, here is my conversation with Dillon. Well, hi, Dillon. Thank you so much for coming on Rewildology today. We're going to have so much fun. I already know we are.
This is going to be so much fun.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
thanks for having me.
We're going to have a freaking blast. Yeah, I'm so excited to come on. And oh my gosh, please share with everyone listening how you got into this field and your childhood growing up. I would call it different than a lot of other people that become biologists. So please share.
Yeah, it's so like I think that a lot of people have this idea of like biologists, they grew up like in the dirt and in the mud, like grabbing snakes and worms and stuff or whatever. I was like dead terrified of everything to do with nature, but irrationally scared. Like I wouldn't go gardening with my grandfather because I was scared of worms or whatever. They actually still make fun of me for because I wouldn't go in swimming in the lakes in Texas where I grew up, because I had convinced myself that a bull shark would swim up from the Gulf of Mexico and like bite my leg off or whatever. Even though like all the lakes are like landlocked there because they're all like man-made lakes or whatever. So yeah, I just had this incredibly irrational fear of everything nature, and it's weird because I was consuming a lot of nature content. Like I was always watching, like religiously watching Animal Planet and like Discovery or whatever. But then around 15, I like a switch just flipped in my head, and it was just no fear at all anymore. I think I like overcorrected, honestly, because yeah, I grew up. My parents had they had a pet store, so I kind of grew up around animals still, and then yeah, I just started working there right after I got over my fear or whatever, and sort of just dove in really deep. And I was like, wait, these are actually really cool. You know, I was terrified of them, but I knew a lot about them because I don't know. I guess it's like watching horror movies, even if you're scared to death of horror movies, because it's like, I don't know. I like to be scared. So yeah, I just got really deep into it. And, you know, the cascade of events, the little stepping stones that led me into keeping animals in, you know, terrariums or whatever, to this more scientific way of doing it, to, you know, straight up research nowadays. It's been a fun journey and an interesting one for sure.
So, have you had a chance to like reflect on or pinpoint what that event must have been where it just switched your mind from being deathly scared to not? I mean, that is such a huge change. And what What do you think that might have been?
Yeah, it's weird because I can remember like the day where I said I'm just gonna do it. Basically, someone had like a big snake, like a boa or a python or something, and they asked me if I wanted to hold it. And I was like, yes. And I don't know, but I think there was a small cascade of things before that where I was saying like I was kind of staring at these animals and watching people interact with them, and I was like, wait a second, they're interacting with a snake or whatever, and it's not trying to bite their face off. It's just doing nothing. It's just kind of chilling there. And I was thinking, like, well, I have this frame of reference of, this extreme fear mongering nature style shows, like Top 10 Deadliest is what I
Yeah.
watched growing up,
Oh
and
my
it's
God.
like, yeah, they make praying mantids seem like incredibly terrifying. And then seeing them in real life and being like, it's not that bad. And then once I guess, dove in, I was like, oh no, it's whatever I was thinking was just completely incorrect. So yeah, but I really don't know if there was like one big thing that changed it. I think it was just a series of small things that led me
Mm,
down this path.
mm. That makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, especially having that moment too where, like you faced your fear, like, yes, I will hold that snake. Like,
Hmm.
I will,
Yeah,
yes. And you're like, oh, I didn't die.
yeah, yeah. That's my threshold. It's like I didn't die, so it must be okay.
So then what did you happen to do after that? So you have this newfound passion for herbs from what we talked about. So, like your snakes, your amphibians, your reptiles, that kind of stuff. So then what did you end up doing after that?
Yeah, so I started, like I mentioned, I started like working in my family's pet store, and eventually I was like managing the entire reptile section, or the entire, I guess, creepy crawly section, because we tarantulas and everything chucked into there. But it was really interesting because like at our height, I think I noted we had over 200 herps and little critters and stuff, just caring for them. So I got really into like the husbandry and captive care aspect of things for a good while. But once I went to undergrad afterwards at a Texas A&M, did a degree in wildlife and fishery sciences, and I sort of saw my own interest changing from a captive husbandry to this more field biology, wildlife conservation side of things. So it's been an interesting, I don't know, there's words for it, change, different comparison, because I mean there's issues with the pet trade, pretty like that go in direct conflict with like wildlife conservation. But me seeing like the back end of it, I think really gave me a awesome frame of reference for what, I don't know, what these animals are really like in many different scenarios, both in the wild and in captivity.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And and I feel the exact same way because every single little girl or little boy growing up is like, "I want a monkey." You know? I
Right.
I mean, I have some family that recently moved here, and the little girl, she's 6 years old, and she's like, "I wanna be a conservationist grow up. Here's my future pet monkey, Brooke. Isn't this what I wanna do?" And, like, I mean, I don't know why we all have that desire, but I completely
Mhm.
understand. And then you have this, like, moment where you're like, "Oh, shit. I don't want to be a part of that anymore because that's
Mhm.
not actually how we conserve wildlife by having them in a cage somewhere or,
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And I mean, like for me, it's always the biggest issue is the taking from the wild, because
Oh
in
my god,
so
yeah.
many ways it's just unregulated, or if it is, every community has sub communities and blah blah blah. But within like a lot of the captive husbandry with herps, there's this weird like okayness with smuggling, and it's like it's very odd. It's something that I've like really kind of tried to come to grips with, and some of it feels a little like, I don't know. Like, I don't know the right word. I think the best word is like colonialist. It's like so
Mm.
weird. It's just
Could you
like
actually
what?
go down this? Like, let's actually
Yeah.
talk about this more because I'm more so like big cats are my thing. So I'm
Mm,
very well aware of how big cats and those kind of body parts get smuggled and into the illegal pet trade and just
mhm.
wildlife trade in general. So yeah, talk more about this. How does that work with herps in the trade?
Yeah. So it's like I can give a really good specific example because I did this post a while back, um, talking about the Bornean earless monitor. So these are they're in Borneo, so, Southeast Asia, and they have never been legally exported from the country. Never. But they are in zoos and in private collections around the world. So, the only route for that is through smuggling. A few zoos, I won't name specific zoos because I don't want to. Some do it really bad. I know Izu Japan was really bad. They definitely just smuggled it or paid smugglers. And I brought it up and I was like, hey, this is like really messed up. There's no way to legally get these creatures, and they're kept in captivity, and they're, for a lot of money. I think at their height they were going for around $10,000 per individual.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's an insane amount of money, and they're relatively small. You could shove 40 of them in a bag, and hey, that's a lot of money. But I remember when I posted about it, because there was a paper that came out, I want to say maybe Nature Conservation, it was some conservation paper, talking about it and like really going in depth about, they were found in zoos, here's how they acquired the animals, they bought them from private collectors, these were smuggled animals that were seized and then put in a zoo. And seized animals is totally different. I'm all for that, putting them in zoos and breeding them or whatever. But it was weird because when I brought it up, a lot of them were saying, well, a lot of people in the comments, a lot of husbandry captive keepers were going off like, well, who cares, because the country is destroying their native land. So like if we don't take them, they're going to be lost forever. And I'm like, no, that's a terrible justification, because like, look at where you live. Like if you're, most of the areas are in the US or Europe, which have destroyed a lot of their land. So it's like, so that, does that give them a right to come in and like take our wolves, or take our moose, or it's like it's such a bad argument. And it's just this ideology that we are better because we're like a Western society, so that we can take these animals illegally, instead of like actually helping the countries where these animals live and helping them do conservation efforts. Because a lot of them were saying like, oh, we're going to take them and captive breed them for conservation, which I hate that argument, because there has yet to be aside from zoos, there has not been like a pet, like private individual captive husbandry within reptiles and amphibians that was bred for conservation where it actually worked. It has never happened. Every time someone gives me an example, it's a zoo that does it, not a private individual. And so they're saying that's what they're doing, but it's like, no, you're not. You're doing it, and then you're selling them for $10,000 to another private collector. You're not getting them back into Borneo because you can't. And also, there's organizations in Borneo that are doing that. Why not support them? The people who actually live there and actually know where these animals are from and how they interact. And you sitting on the internet in Germany or Florida or whatever somehow know better than them. It's like, what type of mentality is that? It's just not like, if you're fine with smuggling, just say you're fine with smuggling. Like, don't don't try to act like you're morally superior because you smuggled. Like, it makes no sense. It's just wrong. It's because I mean, yeah, you could say that about rhinos as well. Like, we should take all the rhinos out of Africa because the habitat's going away or something. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, changing the species often makes the narrative a little bit more clear.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great example. And there's just like so many fantastic points that you made there. And I mean, I feel the exact same way with big cats too. And I'm so against private ownership of big cats well, because one, they are significantly bigger than a
Yeah.
than a little newt or something. But
Right.
also it's the same thing, because like, so many of these organizations where the laws are pretty lax in the States are like, oh, this is for conservation. Tigers are, going extinct in the wild. And if we didn't have them here, then they would be, dead. And it's like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure Joe Exotic did a lot of stuff for conservation.
oh,
Like, come on, like,
I mean,
yeah,
but it's the
right.
same thing. But it's the same thing. And also, too, I really love that you brought up that mentality, this like power dynamic mentality. I'm actually currently reading a book right now that's going really deep into that. I mean, I got to reread the part, so I can't like go too in depth intellectually about it, but just talking about how there's definitely almost this bullying or just colonialistic mindset of we know better than you in a lot of different conservation organizations, or
Mhm.
just that mindset with some older ways of things. And like the example, it's called Rewilding the World by like Caroline
Mm.
Fraser is what I'm reading right now. And she's just going really in depth about like trans frontier parks, and like, so these trans border parks is like using conservation as a way to help with political instability and like it, and all these things, the good things that can go with that. And just talking about how like Kruger and his white colonialistic ways is pretty much a bully to like Mozambique and all these other areas. And
Mm.
I just damn, I just was so ignorant about all this type of stuff, and how I mean, this was not too long ago. This was like the early 2000s when she was writing this book and that all this stuff was
Mm,
going on. I'm just like, how is this still such a thing so much after, apartheid and
right.
everything? And that's a really good example. Like, we know better than you. And how many other places are just like, what the hell are you doing to your wolves? Like, you finally, like, have some, like, success with your
Yeah.
predators and, like, wildlife conservation, and then now out of nowhere, on you're just gonna devastate 90% in some of your states of your wolf populations. Like, it's the exact
Yeah.
same mentality. It's like, we're so hypocritical. We are
Oh
so
yeah.
hypocritical, and I
It,
don't think people want to admit that.
no, and it makes no sense. And it's like, I mean, because I've done some work in Central America before, and I've worked with, interns from all over. And I've had that before where it's like, they didn't, explicitly say we know better, but implicitly they were very much so like, we know better than the guy who like lives here, who has like been a jungle guide his entire life. And I'm like, bro, you grew up in Toronto. Like, you do not know the jungle. Like, what are you talking about? No, you don't know. And it's like, it's just because, like, oh, because you have an education. Okay. Like, that doesn't mean anything. I know a lot of stupid people in academia. Like, yeah, it doesn't do any good. It's just like you can learn from everyone, and the people who like actually know their areas, know their like the place where they grew up, they know it really well. And just because their knowledge is informal doesn't make it wrong. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I don't I think I was randomly having a conversation with somebody, and I was like, "Yeah, try some academic somebody to come into my little podunk forested Appalachian home and see how far they get."
mhm,
As opposed to talking with somebody who knows the area, like, if that's what, like, and this is just, like, one specific example coming from somewhere where, 1, there needs to be a lot more conservation work, and 2, it's a very misunderstood place. It's kinda like
mhm.
I mean, Dave Chappelle calls, like, where I grew up, the dusty white people. Like, that's just, like, that's what he calls them,
Uh,
like, just he's like, "The dusty white people that just gotten completely forgotten," and
mm,
so any stand-up you hear from Dave Chappelle, I'm like, "Yeah, he's just talking about where I grew up," but that's, like, an example too. It's like, how are you going to know better? And, like, that's why I'm so cognizant when I travel. I mean, every single person I meet, I'm like, "Please tell me
mm,
everything that you know. Share with me everything that you know." Because, yeah, I might have lots of letters behind my name, but I don't know freaking jack shit. I've never been here.
right.
Like, I don't know what your problems are. I don't know your life history. I don't know what it's like to have a lion in my backyard, or a hyena, or every single
Mhm.
thing that's deadly that wants to kill me and my family and my cattle. Like, I have no clue.
Yeah, exactly. It's about listening at the end of the day. Like, that's all it is. And it's like, yeah, it's something I've just never really understood, because it's like I go to a new spot, I don't know anything about it. But it's this weird mentality that I don't really know where it comes from, of like superiority over other areas and other people. It's an odd mentality that is really pervasive in the sciences. I mean, you hear about like parachute science quite a bit, where people just go into an area, do all the research, and then publish on it just for themselves, not giving anything of benefit to the people who actually live there. And it's just like, you're not helping the area. Like, you really care about conservation, you really care about conservation in this area, you need to do more than like just add publications for your CV. You need to help support the area more and more. And that doesn't mean by doing more research and setting up like trips for yourself. That means like actually engaging with the community. That means actually like working together to take their knowledge and your specific knowledge of like how to, I don't know, yeah, they have knowledge of the area, they know where to find the animals, they know how to like track, and like you may know how to publish a paper and do like weird statistics that no one really knows what they really mean. But like it's, everyone can bring something to the table, but it's this mentality of, no, I have to bring everything to the table, and that's just so wrong.
Right. And yeah, that's it's just such another great example, because when I was in Nepal and I released my Coexisting with Giants series, I sat down with a lot of people where that was their exact feeling. They're like, "We don't want to talk to a whole bunch of people that come here." For that exact reason. They're like, "Okay, so you can come in and I'm going to waste my time talking to you. You are going to get all the accolades and whatever, and then you're going to leave." And then also
Mhm.
another one of my really good friends who he has his PhD, and he's an incredible guy. And he just talks about how much academia is broken in that sense,
Mhm.
where there's this constant pressure to publish for various reasons. And he's like, it's like the whole thing needs to change. Like the
Mhm.
whole like for-profit model on publishing science that should be open access,
Yeah.
and to like the way that schools get funding for like the research that their people are doing. And I mean, it's a whole cascade of things. Yeah, I don't know how we tackle that
Right.
one, but it's so much of this has been brought to my attention because I did not go down that route. I was really
Mm.
thought that I was going to be go down like a PhD route too, and then I found other ways to help,
Mm.
and I was like, I like this better. And then the more I and then the more I learn and talk with people who are like in the trenches of academia, they're like, it's so broken, but I don't know what the hell to do. Like,
Mhm. Yeah,
you
and I
know?
mean, like with these like going to other countries and publishing, it's so bullshit. Like, it's so easy just to add someone as an author. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if you just add like someone on as an author. Like, hey, the people that helped you actually find these animals, add them as an author. Like, give them some credit. Like, help them succeed more now in their careers as well. It's like it doesn't do anything. They're like, well, we put them in the acknowledgments. One, how many people read the acknowledgments? Like,
I never
like
do.
right. And it's like that doesn't help them at all. Like, you're not going to put on your CV, I was in the acknowledgments of a paper. No, like, come on. You're going to, but yeah, but if their name is on there and like they, now there's a, like, they actually see that, oh, we helped out and now we have a paper. Like, I mean, we talk about it in academia a lot. There's so many academics that are like, yeah, I do this with my undergraduates. They're helping out in the lab. I want to, I put their name in the middle of the author list on the paper. They maybe helped write a few paragraphs or did something to get the authorship. But it's like, okay, take that exact same idea and apply it to wherever you're doing research, because it literally costs you nothing to give someone the credit they deserve. Like, nothing.
Exactly. Exactly. And going to where I've been around the world, and because I travel for nature phenomena. So I'm
Mhm.
going around to see the amazing, beautiful areas and wildlife that this world has to offer. I'm not going into the jungle by myself.
Mhm.
I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, there's always somebody who's a local who knows an insane amount more. I mean, people, how do you think BBC gets their footage?
Mm.
It's not these cameramen that are just coming in and getting this insane stuff. There are local people on the ground that are taking them to these places because they know the wildlife phenomena so
Mhm.
well that that's actually what's going on. You
Right,
know?
right. Yeah, and it's like I think it's Monday here is I forget the right name that they're using. I think it's going to be Indigenous Peoples Day because it's also Columbus Day, and it's like ha like, got him. But it's like, God, because I'm preparing a few posts about it, but I think that the statistic is like 80% of conservation land is managed in some way by Indigenous people. Like, it's like, so, hey, maybe you should include them because the place you want to save, they really want to save it too.
Yeah, it's
But
their home.
yeah, exactly. It's like, why wouldn't you want to save their home? And it's like that's actually a great point, because if you see it as like this is their home, people start to understand that a little bit better, instead of like this is just land that people happen to live on. No, it's like people want to save their home. Like, work with them to save their home. If you come into their home and say, "Hey, you're living wrong in your own home," like, no one's gonna listen to you. If some dude broke into your back door and said, "Yo, you're like you're salting your eggs wrong," like, no, 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 everyone's gonna you're gonna kick him out because they're like, this guy's an asshole. Like, it's the exact same mentality. It's
Mhm.
and it's like most of it doesn't have to be so complicated. That's what I don't. But for some reason, for a lot, it is. But I think a lot of it is really implicit. I really don't think a lot of it is like we're intentionally going into an
Oh,
area,
absolutely.
right? But it's like, yeah, there's just a lot of implicit bias and a lot of ways that we are trained, and also just not being aware that of how your actions are impacting these people in these ways. So,
And I hope to, because I'm almost every single person our age that is a scientist in some way, shape, or form, I'm starting to hear this exact same sentiment. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know, well, granted, that might be biased because I don't like to deal with assholes, and so I just kind of, like, just don't deal with them. So this
Right.
might be a slight bias because I just don't talk to those people, but, I mean, I'm getting that from everybody, you know?
Mhm.
No matter what
Right.
they do, no matter what their role is in conservation. I think that now that our generation is getting to a point now where we're seeing this stuff, and it might be because we are so connected. I chat with my friends all the time now in Nepal that are like my age, and we connected really well. And so, like, that's a different conservation level. You know what I mean? Like, because that's a different connection when
Mhm.
you're connecting so well with other people that are your age and you're actually seeing it from their point of view and their perspective. And so, I mean, I don't know what to do about this. I mean, it's not like all old white men are bad people. That's not it at all. It's just
Right.
that it's mostly that demographic that is in these higher positions that
Mhm.
are dictating stuff. And again, I mean, because I feel like a lot of like just that demographic has gotten a really bad rep recently.
Mhm.
And there are still good people doing good things. It's just yeah, I don't know what it's going to take, and it's so hard for, our generation to get, like, a tenure professor position to start
Mhm.
to mix in new ideas and new ways
Right.
of doing things. Yeah, I don't have any solution at all. This is just, like, an
No, no,
observation.
of course not. It's like yeah, I mean, this is like always the problem with the academia. It's like I mean, I've had so many like talks about diversity committees that are all white, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe y'all should look inwards before you start trying to make change too, because it's I don't know. It's just there is like it's like that tricky balance between actually doing something about it and then saying you're doing something about it but not actually doing anything. It's that performative allyship versus actual allyship, and like most of it is like I always I always I've told friends before, hey man, stop trying to relate and just listen because you can't relate. Like you need to stop. It's not the same, and like you're trying so hard to say like you've experienced discrimination too as like a white male. It's like, maybe listen to her and like actually listen to like what she's saying, and then it because it's not the same. It's not the same. And yeah, but it's like what you were saying. You were talking to, we now live in a more connected society. We actually can talk to people from a diverse background very easily. I mean, we are all 2 clicks away from someone on the other side of the world. It's honestly incredible. But yeah, there's this saying you want to do something, saying you support it, and like, I firmly believe they do support it, but they're not actively making efforts to change. And instead, they're trying to be watchdogs and performing about how great they are. But no, it's just like, hey, support it, be chill about it, and like make sure that you are doing the best that you can do. Um, Instead of, crying from the top of the ivory tower about how bad it is down there. Like,
Like, look how bad it is for them over there, and,
yep. Yeah. But I don't want to go over there. No, no, no. Oh God, no, it's
now
bad over there. Like,
I still wanna go home to my $500,000 home and in my Mercedes, and I don't wanna give that up.
right, right, right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even just today, my friend Indrajit from India, I have a WhatsApp from him currently on my phone. He just told me that India is opening back up. And he's like,
Oh,
November 15th, you can start bringing your clients back. Like, let's go see some tigers, Like,
oh,
that's how
cool.
connected we are now. Like,
Yeah.
my friend Indrajit, and he's just like, we're open November 15th. Like, it's just- it's awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool. Like, I really appreciate this interconnectedness. I mean, of course, there's like the bad parts of this social media landscape that we have, blah blah blah, misinformation, etc., etc. But there's a lot of good that comes from it.
Hmm.
I mean, just in terms of like accessing science, like I don't have to go to a library, pull out an index card, and like try to find it on a shelf, and then open it up and write down my notes. It's just 3 button clicks, hoping my proxy for my university works, and then I have the research.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
also too, as this, like, open access concept becomes more the norm, which I
Mhm.
feel like it's definitely starting, because now me being a scientist, but no longer being with an organization, I no longer have access to 75-80% of the papers out there, and it
Hmm.
pisses me off. I've gone
Oh
on
yeah.
so many rants because there's like, I mean, even for this show, like there's a lot of episodes that I really want to do and put together. But
Hmm.
since I know how to do proper research, I don't feel like I'll be able to actually do those episodes until I have access to way more peer review papers.
Hmm.
And it's just the irony
Right. Oh,
of
I mean,
it.
like the whole like academic publishing thing is complete horseshit. Like, I mean, like I am tied to a university. I am like I do biology at a California State University university. I do not have access to nature. Like I have to go through like friends or email the author or just use Sci-Hub or something to like get access to like one of the biggest journals for my field because it's too expensive. And I think there's some stuff about making a statement like, yeah, we don't really want to support a journal that costs $12,000 to publish in, like, that we then
Right.
have to pay access for. Like,
Exactly.
God.
Exactly. I mean, I'll like I see this awesome headline like, I really need to read that paper. It's like a brand new finding or something or an area that I'm really interested in, whether it's like geographic or just like a science area.
Hmm.
And I like click on it and it's like rent it for a 48-hour access for like $60. And I'm just like, fuck you.
Right? It's just absolutely bonkers to me. And it's like people are always like, "Oh, well they must have to do a lot, like they must have to pay for a lot." No, they don't. They have their profit margin is like 2 to 3 times higher than traditional magazines whose sole goal is to make money. Like, and then what? Oh yeah, they're paying their volunteer editors. Oh, wait, are they paying to
Exactly.
publish? No, no, no. We're paying to publish.
Hmm.
Like, and it's like, oh, then we're paying to access the things that we published. Like, it's I mean, you hear stories like somewhat often of someone paying to publish in a journal and then they cannot access their own publication because their university doesn't have the access to that journal or whatever. It's like, what
It's
is this?
gross. That's why
Yeah, and
I hope we just keep like pushing this open access form.
mhm.
Like, this
Yeah,
should be open access. Everyone should
right.
have access to knowledge.
Yeah, and there's like other publishers that are like okay, I understand. Like, hey, if you're having this volunteer basis, you're running on tight profit margins, blah blah blah. I mean, yeah, they have to pay for the journals, they have to pay for the upkeep of the servers. They have to, of course, pay someone who's running this stuff. I'm all for that. Like, I understand that. But when you're making billions of dollars in profit, like not an exaggeration, it's billions every year. Thanks, Wiley. It doesn't make sense. And then you see these open access things like the Pensoft open access publishing ecosystem. Theirs are like, I think because I published a couple things in there, some smaller like notes, and they were like $200 to publish, and it's open access. I'm like, oh yeah, I feel okay with that. I can easily find that funding, but it's like I want to publish open access in something like Evolution or Nature, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Like, I have to write a grant that's like almost more than my salary. No, no, come on, no, I'm not.
Just to get the paper
No,
out there.
yeah, it's a
It
broken system.
is. But the more conversations we have about it though, and the more that people get aware of it, hopefully it just, stems more need for change. You're
Right.
like, this is broken. This is so broken. Why can someone who's a trained biologist, aka me, have no access? And even you, because your school doesn't have the
Hmm.
correct partnership with these journals, then you can't even
Uh-huh.
access stuff for your
Right.
knowledge and what you're doing. Speaking of, now that we just like bitched about academia for like a half an hour, you're actually doing some really, really cool stuff. Some stuff that like, well, one, I have not had anyone on the podcast chat about, so I'm really excited to get into this. But if you wouldn't mind, just start sharing with us what exactly you are looking at for your master's right now in San Diego in your grad program. Like, what is it that
Mhm.
what are the creatures? What's the bigger idea? What's the questions? Let's really start to dive into that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's it's interesting. So if like I take the title of the work, right, it's a phylogenetic regionalization of Middle American herpetofauna, which is just literally nothing but jargon, and it makes sense to I think only me and maybe my advisor, but we're still not 100% sure because whatever. But basically, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take all of the herpetofauna, so the reptiles, amphibians within Middle America, which politically is Mexico down to Panama. I extended the borders because I'm like, you shouldn't do biological studies based on political boundaries because animals don't care about the border. But basically, trying to infer regions of shared evolutionary history for all of these critters that are out there. I don't actually know how many species I'm working with because the number keeps changing. I feel comfortable. My last like preliminary whatever results was about 1,200 species, but it might expand up to over 2,000 if I can just get the data for them. It's a stupid amount of data, but basically, so it's these regions, right? So we take their evolutionary history, this information about how are species related to one another, how are I don't know the frogs related to the salamanders, right? Um, and then we use that information along with where are these species found throughout this entire massive range to say, hey, there is this pocket in the Yucatan Peninsula that has its own unique little bits of evolutionary history. And then, oh, there's this another one right at around the Sierra Madre Occidental that has its own little unique pocket. So you start to see these little, I mean, they look like patches on a map. And I have those patches. I'm trying to make them a little bit better, add in more data to just do it, basically. But once we have that, we can start to try and piece together a story of, okay, well, why are these patches these patches? Why are these regions a region? And there's all these different processes and theories as to why. It's a relatively new methodology, so there's a lot of ideas and like guesses, but then there's also a lot of me trying to disentangle a lot of the processes. So this is actually it's sort of a redo of this older project from the 60s through the 80s from Savage. And his whole thing was, why do we have the diversity of reptiles and amphibians that we do in Central America? So, Central America just basically being the countries, some people include Mexico, like the southern parts of Mexico, but the areas from Panama upwards at the tropical regions. And his whole thing was dispersal or vicariance. So dispersal being they're coming from North America, South America, and they're just meeting up in the middle, basically. Or this vicariance idea where they're already in the area. There's not new species necessarily coming in, but they're just in an area, and then over time they're diversifying, and one species becomes many species. And his conclusion was that, yes, there were dispersal events. We know there's dispersal. The Great American Biotic Interchange from things from South America came up north, things from North America came down south. But there was a lot of vicariance as well. There was a lot of that speciation once those dispersal events happened. And that's a potential thing. There's like a whole bunch of theories as to how that could have happened, blah, blah, blah. But that study was done decades ago and has been sort of a really landmark case for biogeography, this study of where are species found and why. But it hasn't really been updated. So, and there was some, back then the data wasn't near as good as what we have today. He was using largely genera level instead of species level trends. It was, I mean, at the end of the day, yes, he's incorporating information from mountain ranges and climate and other systems. Like I think he included trees as well. But he's essentially saying drawing lines on a map almost by hand using a lot of data, but it's like, I think I think we can consider this a region. This makes sense based on this. Versus this method that I'm really working on, it is completely blind to whatever biases I have. Like if I think that they should split around this mountain range, this method doesn't even consider that mountain range at all. It just says, hey, there are species here that are related to species over here. We're going to make them a region. These species are totally different. We're going to make these two different regions. So it's this really awesome way of, one, updating a really pivotal piece of research with just the massive amount of data that we have nowadays, but then also trying to disentangle those same questions, but with better understanding of how these systems came to be. We have a much better understanding of the plate tectonics in the area because it's stupidly complex. We have more understanding of how did species come in, particular clades, like, I don't know, like we know how these specific salamanders came through and we have a much better idea now. So it's this sort of it's an update of an older project, but done in such a different way with so much data that I'm just so freaking excited to like really start to get some good answers. Because right now I'm just in data processing, data collection, and trying to just add as much data as possible to this system.
That's awesome. And so let's really get into this process. So
Uh-huh.
you keep saying data. Obviously, you
Mhm.
are not going out to every single hotspot of biodiversity and doing census. How do you get your data?
Yeah, that's a good one. So it's so interesting because my entire background is ecology, like going out into the field, and this project has zero field work, and it kind of drives me nuts. But basically, I really only need two bits of data. I need where a species found and their phylogenetic history, which is just their evolutionary history. How are they related? The phylogenetic data is something that I'm currently working on, and that's pulling together a bunch of different genes and forming a tree using these theories. There's already really great phylogenies out there, but I want to make it really robust. I want to have a lot of species on there. I want to do it a little bit better, just for my own sanity. That one is just a bunch of code, just a bunch of pouring through databases and putting it all together using the theory to say, hey, these two species are more related together than this species, or that's that. But the interesting thing for me is the occurrence data set. So where are species found? And for that, I'm really using two primary sources. There's the IUCN, which is the big organization. They're the ones that say, like, hey, this species is endangered. This species is, we shouldn't even be worried about it. They're least concern. And they have range maps for a lot of the species down there. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So I'm using that data. But they don't always have data for all species, or their range maps are very old. And I mean, I have range maps in there from 2004,
Mm.
so almost 20 more years of collecting data, collecting information on where these species are found. So I'm using a different database, this Global Biodiversity Information Facility, GBIF. It is stupidly awesome. Basically, it is this database that pulls from all these other databases of where species are found. So if you ever use the app like iNaturalist, where you go out and you're like, you take a picture of a species and say, hey, I found it here. If it goes to research grade, that is now in GBIF. If you collected information on where species were found for an atlas project or like a survey or a published piece, that's in GBIF. If you collected a specimen for a museum, that's in GBIF. So there's a few billion records I think in there, and I just pull all of that for Middle America and clean it because it's super messy. There's a lot of mistakes, but we know where the mistakes are. So doing that, incorporating them in with the IUCN data, and doing that enables me to actually get this really cool occurrence data set for species that are really rare or hard to find, which is especially with hard to find. That's a lot of the reptiles and amphibians, especially in Middle America. It's actually kind of nuts to see the biases because you see the U.S. Mexico border very clearly, very clearly. Lots of species found in the U.S., not as much found in Mexico. Costa Rica is just like a spotlight because there's so many people that go there and like iNaturalist things or whatever, and it's had decades and decades of research. And then you'll see places like El Salvador. You can almost make out the country borders because it's just not as well researched. So which is why I'm using both data sets to get the best of both worlds. But yeah, so it's basically using a data set that starts out with, I think it's 3 or 4 million rows. Just we found a species, we found a species, we found a species, we found a species. Cleaning that up, making it something I can actually use, and then combining it with thousands of shape files from the IUCN, plotting them on a map, and then, I mean, getting in the nitty gritty of the actual method, I like divide the map into thousands of tiny little squares, and then for every little square, I'm like, oh, what species are found in this tiny square? And then I like, okay, now look at the square next to it. What species are found in that little square? Okay, how similar are these two squares now? And then you do that for every single square against every single square, and you get like a super ugly table of these squares are really cool, they're really closely related, these two squares have nothing in common. Like the table is so big I can't open it in Excel on my computer because it just crashes it every time. It's just one of those, like, I have it in R, I do all my stuff in R, and I just like, it's just like it exists, but I can't exactly see the little nuances of it. But at the end of the day, it's just a giant cell that has like values from 0 to 1. So it, yeah, I mean, yeah. What am I going to see? Species or a grid cell 362 is 0.74 per, similar to grid cell 3209. Like, it doesn't matter. But then you do all the analyses and processing to cluster all these bits of data together to form these, they're called phyloregions, phylogenetic regions. And it's so cool. But gosh, I don't know where the rabbit hole started, but I know I went down it. So
No, you went down it just like I hoped you would. You explained so much, which is wonderful. So I guess now, how is this applicable? Meaning, like,
Mhm,
so at the end of the day, you have this. Okay, let me actually
mhm,
reverse. We're not even gonna get to that part yet because my next
cool.
question is gonna be before it. What is going to be the answer? So, you are defending your thesis. You have this thing that you've written. What is it that you hope to find? And have you already found things? So what is the this is
Mhm,
the answers that I'm trying to find for this
right.
set of questions.
Yeah, yeah. So once we have these regions, right? That's just really the first step, which is, the first step has like 75 sub steps, but the first step. Um, then we will take those regions and try to figure out, okay, well, the why are these regions, and there's a lot of processes that could happen. So there's this idea of endemism, right? That there's actually different types of endemism, where endemism is like something is restricted to a certain range. But nowadays there's this idea that there's this thing called paleoendemism and neoendemism, right? There's this new version of endemism where these species are endemic because they're very recently evolved. That's not great terminology. They recently speciated. So now they just haven't had like the time over, thousands and thousands of millions of years to spread out. Versus this paleoendemism, which is the one I'm actually really interested in, where this species or these groups of species may have been widespread, but with changing climates, with even plate tectonics, because this is the scale of time we're talking about. Their ranges just got so constrained, and now they are these almost very unique clades that are a little bit different than everything else. And these are often like found at the tops of mountaintops. There's a lot of salamanders in my data set that you find just on mountaintops throughout the Sierra Madres, and it's really interesting. So those have different effects. Some of them split regions, some of them can make regions kind of form together. They muddy the water, and that's like the deep dive on like one of the processes. But there's also things like how speciation occurred. Did it occur sympatrically, where things are speciating within one area, or did it occur like allopatrically in different areas? Like the classic example is going around a mountain, and now it's like species A is on the west side and species B is on the east side. There's processes just like dispersal ability. How quickly can species disperse? I mean, if you're comparing a salamander that kind of moves slowly, maybe doesn't really leave the log for weeks at a time, compared to something like a bird that is just like, I'm gonna, go down to Mexico. I'll see you in Canada in a couple months. Like it's, it drastically changes how these regions can really delineate from each other. So though I'm trying to basically look at all of those in concert together and try to see, hey, what is going on here? Why are we seeing these regions? So it's basically a series of tests to figure that out. And that for me is just very interesting. But the why is this, like, why do we want to actually do this? Like, why? Because at the end of the day, it's like, okay, that's cool, like neo paleo endemism, whatever. But it's so what? Which is why I kind of started with the paleo endemism, because it shows that, hey, with a changing climate, these species are becoming more restricted. And we're having these unique pockets, these areas, say, just west of Mexico City, that have their own unique evolutionary history. They have something about them is different than the rest of Middle America. And whenever we are trying to actually make conservation goals, for example, we've often thought about conservation is about saving just threatened species, which, yes, it should be, of course, like save the species that are most in peril. But not all species are equivalent, right? Each species has its own evolutionary history, its own story that led it from, where it was with a common ancestor millions of years ago to where it is today. And if we look at like, I mean, like elephants are a great example because they're distinct. There's really nothing like them. They're just different. There's not like 35 different species of elephants and maybe one or two are threatened. What we're seeing is that, oh no, these elephants are unique. We should save them, and they're threatened. So Where my project is coming in, it's actually trying to look at these pockets of unique evolutionary history as a whole, not just for a specific species, but say, hey, for some reason, this area is very unique and it contains a lot of threatened species. You can actually add in a metric, I believe it's called EDGE. I think it's evolutionary distinctiveness. And I always forget the G and the E. Um, but it's saying like how distinct are these animals in this area, and how, oh, evolution distinct and globally endangered. That's what it
Mm.
was. So yeah, it's combining like how extinct or how unique they are with how endangered they are, how threatened are they, to give you a metric. And I can apply that directly to my regions to say, hey, this particular region has an immense amount of very unique biota that is found nowhere else in the world, and it's very threatened. So not just a single species, but the entire region, which I think is so important, because I'm not necessarily a big fan of single species conservation. I think that in order to save a species, you need to save the entire ecosystem around it. But at the end of the day, we're selling stickers for elephants, for rhinos, for we're not selling it like save the grassland. It's like there's maybe it's just because we can't look into the eyes of a grass and be like, I relate with you, but yeah, so I'm very big on that habitat conservation, but also understanding that species are different. Species are inherently unique, and some are more threatened and more unique than others. So, but trying to take a whole, I don't know, whole pie approach to it instead of just taking a slice, I want to say like, this area, this is what we need to save. And I think through this methodology where I'm using this intense amount of data, using like a lot of different metrics, and actually trying to understand how did they get to where they are today? Why are they unique? Why is this area unique? I think it adds a really incredible narrative to their story. This isn't just an area that's been impacted by logging, and it probably is as well, but it's saying that, hey, this area has had 300 million years of this incredible evolution. The mountains have formed, and the mountains have like sort of been eroded downwards, and through that, species that originally were widespread have now found refuge in this mountain range, and they're being threatened by logging. They're being threatened. They've survived for hundreds and hundreds of millions of years, but now they're being absolutely decimated by 50 years of logging or whatever. So I mean, I see everything as a story, so I'm always going to pull them all together. But yeah, I don't know. I'm like, we always talk about the end of the story, but we never talk about the beginning and the middle and the battle before the end. I guess we're just like, yeah, the trees are going down. We got to save them. It's like, yeah, but like by the time we get the legislative and everything, the trees are already gone, and so.
No, that's great. That's great. So it sounds like what you really hope to do is pretty much use this as, at least tell me if I'm interpreting this correctly, is once you get your data points, take this to some sort of conservation body that can make change and be like, look, you have
Mhm.
to do whatever you can to protect this area. We have
Right.
to make new conservation plans that both
Mhm.
benefit communities there and the wildlife. And these are the areas we need to focus on. Is that what you're hoping to do?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big part of it. And also the thing that I think is often forgotten with science in general is that when you're doing a project, even if you are not collecting the data yourself, you are collecting data together. You're pulling it together into this source. You're making something useful. And I'm really hoping that all of this occurrence data set that I'm working on, cleaning and getting together and making into something that is actually usable, can then be used for many other projects. It's why I'm doing this phylogenetic tree, that evolutionary, history tree, and trying to make it very, very fine scale to include as many species as possible for this area, so that someone else can say, hey, this guy has a occurrence data set for, like, I'll just use El Salvador again because it keeps popping up on my little radar. But yeah, it's like El Salvador data set. Well, he has the occurrence data set. He has all this data where the species are found, and it's like really curated. It's very cleaned up. It's combining data from all these sources, and he has this data that I can use to show the evolutionary history of the area. So, and it's open access because my data is definitely going to be able to just anyone can download it and use it. So then,
That's awesome.
random Joe Blow person, conservation organization, another researcher, someone else can easily take that information and use it for their own purposes. So even though I'm doing like a massive broad overview, they may take it just for the Bolitoglossa salamanders within Panama or something, and use that data.
Oh my gosh. This could be really huge. I mean, which obviously, if you didn't you wouldn't have done this if you didn't think that as well. But like just thinking about that from like, this is rewildology, like rewilding the world, conserving the world, this new form of conservation that I think that we are in the past like couple years have started to go down. And one of the biggest things is the questions is
Mhm,
where, how, who, what are the species? Like,
mhm,
and so, and also too, since so many other forms of research are very species specific, and
mhm,
you are looking at entire regions, I mean, that is so powerful because then there's so many more stakeholders that you automatically know are going to be in
mhm.
that because it's an entire region.
Right,
It's not
right,
just
and
a
I
species.
yeah, exactly, and it's like, okay, let's pull this habitat out, like let's take out phyloregion number 7, right? Let's pull out all of the endangered species in there and put them on like a, show them, hey, you have these endangered salamanders that are really cool, you have these endangered frogs, you have, I mean, I'm only doing the herpetofauna, but we can, because I'm developing everything as pipelines that I can just click a button and run an analysis pipeline, just takes an input, makes an output. I could easily do this for mammals if I wanted to, so someone else could pull this same mammal data set, they pull IUCN, they pull GBIF, they pull some phylogeny, pop it in, and they can get their output as well much easier because I've trying to make it easier for them. So now you can say, hey, this region, this particular area, it's not just, hey, we want to save a jaguar. Okay, well, where throughout the entire range of jaguars do we want to save? It's almost too big of a problem to really take apart, but it's like, hey, within this region, what plot of land can we set aside? What plot of land can we set aside to save, the big cats that are endangered here, the salamanders, the frogs, something that, yeah, addresses many stakeholders that, you may be a mammal person, you may be a bird person, you may be a frog person, but you can now see, hey, this region has all of those and they're all threatened and they're all needing help in some way. So that's sort of how I like to see these larger macro evolutionary biogeography studies. It's looking beyond a single species and trying to look at what's going on in this area as a whole.
Mm, I love that. I'm a big like big picture person as
Mhm,
well. Like I would rather look at the top down, like, okay, so what is that one thing that we can do that's going to help the most? Also,
mhm,
too, resources don't come easy for our field since we are
mhm.
battling so many other consumptive industries that might make a bigger buck now versus long term. So
Right.
that is something that we always have to fight with. And so just to show that this is valuable. And also too, if you have so many people with different passions, you can bring them all together and that's way more power. There's way more voices that you can
Mhm,
be bringing in for like a particular region too. You could bring in
mhm.
your social scientists that know how to like let's actually see what these communities what issues are they having? What do they
Mhm,
feel that needs to happen to protect the wildlife in their area and their home? And then also bring in the scientists that and you and like this is the area. Everyone put your spotlight on this area and go.
mhm. Right, and it's like if we're talking about like local communities and whatnot, it's like it's being able to point on a map and say this is, I'm probably going to use the region names from other past studies. I don't like naming things like I don't want to. This is the Dillon region, like but it's like being able to point on a map and saying this region is somewhere that is unique. That has been used in conservation for, I mean, decades. It's like conserve the Amazon rainforest. Okay, I mean most people don't really even know what that really looks like, how big is it,
Mhm.
what is it, but it's being able to point and say, hey, this region is really really unique. Like California has the California floristic province. It's some of the most unique and most diverse plant life in the world. It's, I mean, similar to like the Cape area of South Africa. There's just a lot of diversity there, but you don't say this species is here, this species there. You don't say, there's like this. You say there's thousands of species here that are so unique and so cool and so incredible, and people relate with that, whether because they live in that area. They don't necessarily relate to, I live next to this unique species of tree. It's saying, I live in this unique area that has all of these unique elements of it. So that's why I'm a big fan of just regions and trying to make something that's way bigger, because if I say, hey, this region is unique, this area needs to be conserved, this area is different for some reason, anyone who lives in or near that area or has some connection to that area is going to want to save it. They're like, this is my home. I grew up here. I want to save my area that's, super cool. my family lives out there. I want to save it. I want to make sure that if I ever move back there and have kids or whatever, that they're seeing this unique thing that I also see as well. So it's from, I guess it's like from a conservation marketing standpoint, it's really good.
Yeah. Hey, we need those stories, and that's a really
Mhm.
good one too. I mean, I feel the exact same way of like, where I travel and the places that I go to. It's like I want to bring people there as well. And already like in my lifetime I've seen lots of changes too. And so
Mhm.
it's like how can we stop the change and help people too? It's like there's like two dynamics to it. And at least
Right.
having a direction. I mean, it's really easy to get overwhelmed.
Oh yeah.
It's so easy to be overwhelmed. And so, but at least if there's a heading, then it's like, okay, at least we have a spot. We can start
Right.
here. And so where did the idea for this come from?
Oh, it's so weird. So I was in Belize at the time. I was living there for about 6 months or so, looking for grad programs back in the states, and I connected with my current advisor Todd Reeder here at San Diego State, and he just said, "Hey, I'm interested in this method, this phyloregionalization method." That was literally it. He just said, "I've thought about it. Here's a paper." He sent it to me, and what I love so much about him as an advisor is that he just gave me freedom. He just said,
Mm.
"I will help you. I'll help you, but it's your project." And I literally could have chosen anywhere in the world. I could have chosen any group. It would have been herps. We're a herp
Yeah.
lab. We're it's like it's always reptiles and amphibians, but it sort of snowballed into this idea of like, well, what data can I get? What information is available, and what area am I personally invested in? I've Most of my work has been in Central America at some point, so that's where I want to study. Then I was like, well, I want to make it bigger. I want to do Middle America, including the parts of the American Southwest, the desert, the arid regions of Mexico, because I think that's a little bit more interesting. Everyone else is really focused on just the tropics. I'm like, but there's this incredible like transition area from tropical jungle to desert. Like that is so cool to me, and that has like influence on all of these species. So I was like, I'm going to add that in. And then it was, well, what species do I want to do? Because I could have done it with maybe just the frogs, like just hylids, or just like tree frogs or whatever. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to add them all because why not? The data's available, the data's there, and worst comes to worst, I can scale it back. It's much easier to scale back than to scale up.
Mhm.
So I figured start with the most, and I think that actually worked out in my favor because now it's really interesting. We can like split it, like look at how are the reptiles different than the amphibians? How did the salamanders diversify or have these regions different than the frogs? So you can start subsetting the data into really cool little groups. And it's like I had to stop myself and be like, let me just chuck in mammals, let me chuck in some birds as well. Screw it, see what happens. It's so easy to make the projects bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's sort of where the idea came from, was like just an initial seed of here's a cool method, and then I started looking into the theory behind it. And I love theory. I think it's so fascinating. I think it tells the best stories, and just sort of fell in love with the methodology. Did an area that I love, did it with a group of animals that I love. So it was just a combining of multiple passions that led to this project.
Good, because it's gonna take passion to get to the finish line, that's for sure.
Uh-huh.
So when do you think you are going to be done? When is your anticipated graduation or thesis writing,
Yeah.
or when do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm still trying to figure that one out. I'm tentatively planning for the spring of this coming spring. The spring of 2022. I lost a year. I mean, we all did. I,
Oh,
I don't even know what happened.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm like maybe it'll be over the summer. Maybe I'll just vagabond for a bit and finish it up in the fall whenever I want to. And so I'm not gonna beat myself up over it. I'd rather just have something that's really, really good quality.
Right.
Which I mean, even where I'm at now, I'm very happy with the results so far.
Mm.
So it's more so where do I want to find my stopping point? Where do I want to say this is good enough? The good enough is hard for me because I want it to be
Yeah,
better.
yeah, I could totally know that feeling the exact same way. So let's switch here. So I
Mhm.
would include you as an Instagram influencer. You have intentionally built a brand online for, at least to me, for the purpose of educating and sharing biology stuff and also connecting
Mhm.
on a different level with people who might be in a similar situation. So let's really dive deep into that. And I guess the first question I have to ask is why? Why did you decide to do that?
Yeah, so that's a good one because I was yeah, so I started it very intentionally. You know, it's changed over the years, but basically I was on a camping trip, a solo trip, which always the best things in my life happen on solo trips. And I was just like, you know what? I would really love to show sort of what it means to like do biology, do science, do research, but also talk about and educate it in a more modern way. I was just realizing that a lot of the education was stuff that like I was seeing in nature documentaries from like the 80s. Like it was the same type of stuff over and over and over again. It's, you know, species A lives here, species A gets big, species A weighs this much, eats this. And it's just like, okay, that's cool, but like there's no story. There's nothing like engaging with it. It's just, it's an encyclopedia. And I wanted to educate based on stories, but also talk about issues in a more modern light. Um, I really think conservation has been stuck in the 60s and 70s for forever now. And, you know, no matter what, we're still doing the same things for conservation. We're still focusing on single species. And I don't know, I wanted to bring up issues in a more nuanced way because there's a lot of really cool, really freaking cool conservation, oh god, like moral quandaries and ethics and like
Mm,
should we save this species or like are there species we should just let go extinct or you know like I wanted to like talk about these questions. So that's why I started this science communication account, is that one, showing the background but also talking about things in a more modern or nuanced light. Yeah.
mm. And when did you have this like epiphany moment? When was that?
It was in my undergrad, and so I think it was 4 5 years ago, something around there. Whoa, maybe more. Gosh, I always forget. There's like I'm like, how long have I been in grad school? I'm like, this is my third year, and then I was like, oh shit, and I took 6 months off, and then okay. So yeah, it's been at least 5 years. At least
Mm,
5 years. Yeah.
nice, and takes a lot to build anything. So
Hmm.
what strategy did you decide to, at least I mean, I'm sure it changed over time as you got into
Hmm.
it, but you're like, "Okay, epiphany moment, I wanna do this." So then how did
Hmm.
you actually start to go down this path in building your platform?
Yeah, and it definitely has changed. It's changed so often. So I had a lot of growth really quickly early on, and my content was basically just a picture of an animal. I was getting into wildlife photography at the time, so I was taking pictures of the animals and then using the caption to like explain some concept. Usually, it was something that I was trying to learn more about myself, and that's what I did for a few years. And I was posting like 2 to 3 times a week at best, but you know, growth slowed. The social media changes all the time, and I was struggling with this idea of taking the pictures because it's just, I mean, I'm always taking pictures of reptiles and amphibians. When it's winter time, I can't find anything, so it would just be like this awful, like, you know, I definitely had so many, you know, I've been doing it for years, but there were times where like I didn't post for 4 months. There were times where I wasn't consistent with it. And basically, I just wasn't taking it seriously, which is like, yeah, I wasn't expecting to become an influencer. I was like, I just want to make a cool Instagram account. That's how it started. And then I did that for a few years and I was getting more into it. And I was really enjoying, you know, breaking down these concepts and being that educator. But I was sort of, over the course of like a year or two, I was losing followers, which is, you know, now I'm fine with it. Then I wasn't. I was like, oh God, you know, everyone hates me. But it's because I was inactive and, you know, I wasn't doing things that were really interesting. And I realized I was having this, like, over the course of about a year or two, this sort of transition and trying to think about, well, what do I really want to do with this? What do I really want to talk about? What do I want my end product to be? And it's, I want to be more than just, you know, some account that someone goes to, reads some cool thing, likes it and says like, ah, neat. It's like I actually want to make an impact. I actually want to, I don't know, like, engage science, get people into it, get people to actually want to do it more. And I was realizing that my account name used to be Contemporary Conservationist. I liked it at the time because it was a double C, alliteration for the win. I hate it now. I think I was like, oh God, I look back and like, you know, but I mean, that's like anything, you read the paper you wrote 3 years ago. You're like, I was an idiot. Um, but I realized it was pigeonholing me. People didn't know who I was. I was some random photographer that was posting long captions, and it was pigeonholing me to talk about only conservation because I was this conservationist. And I was like, well, I want to talk about like phylogenetic niche conservatism, like these really like specific topics, but it just wouldn't make sense for the brand. So I think it was at the beginning of this year, maybe the beginning of last year, because I don't know, time doesn't exist and I can't remember anything to save my life anymore. I changed it to just Dillon the Biologist. And that was very intentional. I like thought about it for weeks about a new name. And I settled on because I was like, I want to be personal. I want to, if I'm really trying to show that what biology looks like behind the scenes, I actually have to show that there's a person. We often think of scientists as just they're scientists, then that's it.
Right.
They're not a human being. They don't got bills. They don't,
Right.
they're
We
just
have
sitting in an
emotions.
office. Yeah, we don't have anything. We don't have like, like bad days. We're going out and playing with animals, I think.
Right.
But yeah, so I changed it, and I was also really changing the content I was producing because I started getting into videos a lot more. I started really doing this videography stuff and doing some really intense, really over the top editing, and I was trying to show people me looking for animals in the field. I don't do that as much anymore because it just takes way too long to edit and put together, and it's the cost benefit analysis didn't make sense for me to do that.
ROI was not there.
No, not at all. And then it's so funny because if you scroll on my Instagram, right now you'll just see lots of videos of myself, and which is not something I'm an introvert at heart. Like putting myself in front of a camera at first was not my thing. It was no way at all. Like I definitely, me from like 3 years ago would look at my account and be like, what the hell are you doing? Oh my God, stop. But yeah, so now the content strategy that I've really been pushing on the past year is one, trying to create an awesome community of scientists, communicators, researchers, and trying to get them to actually like affect change in some way. So, maybe holding a competition to look for species, maybe trying to work on a project together, like some research project together, trying to talk about design and just really trying to form that community more than like audience, I don't know, audience educator mentality. And then also doing things like short little videos, which I think are just fun for me. But then intermixing those with these longer form posts where I really try to break down concepts in a much more visual way, not just a long caption that most people won't read. And that's partly why I realized I was losing so many followers, is because I was changing so much as well and only posting pictures. So I was really only had photographers that were following me, but I didn't want photographers. I want people who want to learn something. And, there's a lot of overlap between the two, but I was changing it. And then this past year, I've gotten like a lot of growth because I really stuck to my guns and I really was like, no, I want to do this. I want to be personal. I want to be Dillon the biologist, not some faceless person. So yeah, the content, basically to sum up the ramble, the content has changed massively. It's constantly evolving. I'm constantly looking at what I can do better. How can I change it? How can I connect with more people on a social media platform? But yeah, it started very intentionally and it looks nothing like how it did when it started. And that's awesome. That's exactly what I want.
Yeah, it shows that you're growing. You're growing and
Hmm.
evolving as everything changes and you grow. As the
Hmm.
platforms grow and you grow, and you're like, what does the community actually need? I mean, you gotta start somewhere. Everybody has to
Yeah,
start somewhere.
exactly. Exactly. And like your starting point is always going to be shitty. Like I don't care. Like it's always going to be bad, but you have to start. You have to
Mhm.
start or else you're never going to learn and you're never going to grow. So like just post the thing. Just post the thing. Who cares? Like
Yeah, yeah, and like, let's say that someone is really resonating with you. They're like, "Dylan, I've had this exact same idea. There's these concepts that I really want to talk about too, but I don't even know where the hell to start." And especially now that so many social media platforms are going to video, that's just
mhm,
how this is naturally progressing.
mhm.
What are some tips or tricks that you have for anyone listening on maybe where's a good place to start, or things to keep in mind, or this particular way has worked for me? What are some things you would like to share?
Yeah, the tips I think change a lot depending on where you're at. If you haven't started, like if you haven't done anything, if you haven't made a video or made a carousel post or written an interesting long caption before, just start. Just do it once and don't worry about it. Like say honestly, The striving for perfection is what will be your undoing, because it will never be perfect. No matter what you do, it will never be perfect. So just say, I'm going to make an Instagram post at the end of an hour. I will have to post it no matter where it's at, and just do it. Just start somewhere. Don't worry about optimal time to post. Don't worry about how many posts a week can I do. Don't worry about batch creating up 30 content. That I always hear this. Like, I want to start, I'm going to make like a month worth of content. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just make one. Just start with one. And then once you finish that one, a couple days later, start another one. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing little bitty things. And eventually you'll start to figure out, that post that took you an hour, maybe 3 weeks down the line, will take you 20 minutes, because you just know, you understand how to write, you understand like how the picture should look. You don't, you understand, you're learning. Once you start really getting to this point of like kind of understanding just how to post, and also just feeling comfortable with posting, that's a big part. And I think this applies for anything. If you're doing a caption, if you're doing like some Instagram, TikTok short video or whatever, just post something. Then start trying to increase your frequency. Again, ignore the perfection. Just get it out there. Because what I found, and because I'm a perfectionist at heart, I always want things to be perfect. I want it to look as best as possible. What I found is that when I was trying to chase that perfection for each individual post, I would never reach it. And I would get so caught up and I would never post it because it wasn't good enough for me. When I forced myself to do like I was doing a reel a day for when I first started really doing these short videos. It was like one every single day. Then I got up to 2 a day, and I was like, I can do 2 a day, because what I realized is I'm learning with every single post I make, and I'm learning more every single time I post. So the analogy I use is like, well, if I learn from every single post, I would rather learn 10 times a week than 3 times a week. And it's always little things. It's tiny, tiny little things. But now my like baseline for what is an easy post is so much higher than it was, 3 years ago. Like, what takes me 20 minutes now versus 20 minutes 3 years ago, completely different. And it's just because I've learned all these little things. I've learned, hey, this color scheme works really well for me. Hey, when I'm doing these videos and I need to lip sync or whatever, it helps to trim just a little bit off the start of the video, which if I try to do that on one post and try to get it all perfect, I'd never reach it. So in terms of tricks, it's get started, increase your frequency, ignore perfection, never try for it, just say good enough. Even if you don't like it, post it anyways. Like, I will say that again and again. Even if you don't like it, post it anyways. Keep it up and say, okay, cool. I'll learn for the next one. I'll learn for the next one. There is always going to be a bigger project. There's always going to be a more important topic you can talk about, no matter what. This, like, expecting your first post to be your piece de resistance is a terrible idea, because it will not be. So that's really the biggest thing. And also, do what's fun for you. Don't do what you think you should. Do what you want to do. Stop caring about the perfect time to post, the optimal hashtag. Just do it. Just post it and have fun. Like, you're gonna get way more enjoyment, and I guarantee you'll make way more content and better content because of it.
Oh, that sounds great. Oh, that was so good. And two, you have a very wide range of types of videos that you put out there. Like,
Mm.
it's everything from serious to, like, oh my God, my dad is doing something stupid, to like having like a really like personal moment of something you're experiencing. So where do you get inspiration for what you put up on your account?
Yeah, the inspiration thing is always interesting. So, if we're talking about like the nitty gritty of, choosing the right audio for the algorithm or whatever, honestly, I just look at bigger accounts. I look at accounts that are like content managing, they have 200,000 followers or whatever. And I'm like, well, they're doing something right. I'm not going to spend the time looking up the perfect trending audio that'll be trending next week, because that's what they're doing. It's like, I'll take what they're doing. Screw it. One just leaves me up for, it's better because it's more like I am given a prompt and then I can adapt that prompt. I don't have the idea of, I want to talk about how like advisors and professors never respond to emails, and then now I need to find the right audio. It's a backwards way of thinking, because you're never going to find the right audio, especially with how things are on this platform now. What I do is I look for something that gives me some type of template to work off of, and I go from there. Because I think it's easier to have like the general theme, the template of the video, and then say, how can I interject my own experiences into this. So, especially with these short form videos, that's the thing. But if I'm doing something longer form, if I want to break down a topic, usually I'm not looking for a topic. I usually don't. It's just, hey, this paper just came out and I just read it because of happenstance. Let me turn that into a video. Again, I already have a template. I have the paper itself. I'm not saying I need to find a paper that is talking about conservation of salamanders and need to make sure it has a good story that I can adapt into something. I'm just consuming content and looking for cool stories. And that's how where the inspiration comes from. Oftentimes it's seeing someone else's post and wanting to take a single element of it. Like I saw someone talking about sustainable fashion, right? Just that, hey, sustainable fashion should look like this. And in reality, what we think is sustainable is not. And I was like, cool. Well, I took that and I was like, well, a lot of people misunderstand the idea of reduce, reuse, recycle. And so then that was coming from sustainability, the sustainable fashion. It was mentioned reducing your impact, took just the reduce part and turned into a full post. So that's where a lot of the inspiration comes from. It's these little stepping stones. A lot of times it's stuff that I'm trying to learn more about. Like I'm trying to understand a concept called phylogenetic signal a lot better. So there's probably going to be posts about phylogenetic signal so that I can learn them better. So it's really trying to not like have an idea and find the perfect thing. It's about letting the ideas come to you when they feel natural, but always be thinking about how can I turn this random thing that I read into a piece of content? Is that good content? Is that something cool? And if it is, I write it down. So I have just a running list of things that I can talk about. And that's always worked really well for me.
Wow. That's so good because I mean part of this is I want everyone to hear your amazing advice, and part of it is selfish because like I'm so new to this. Like I'm a conservation biologist and I was like
Mm,
I want to create a podcast to share stories like this, share stories like
right.
yours. What are the pain? What are the struggles? What do we really go through? And in the process, I had to learn how to become a social media manager, a content designer,
Mm-hmm.
like a marketing director, and all these things that I had no idea on how to do. I just
Mm-hmm.
like before, I love taking pictures and posting them online just because it's fun, because I travel to cool places and see cool things. Like that was the
Mm-hmm.
extent of
Right.
my thinking of this. But with finally having a reason to build something intentionally, that's why I'm just like so grateful just to hear this. Like this is what's worked for me, and it probably
Mm-hmm.
could work for you. And then especially if anyone listening, because the more people we have online sharing good quality educational alternative
Mm-hmm.
concepts, like if people are scrolling through TikTok anyways, and maybe there's like one video that actually has some concrete, actionable call to
Mm-hmm.
action in it that's better for the world, just imagine. Like, and if that one video went viral for that person,
Mm-hmm.
how many millions of people could possibly be impacted from that one piece of content, you know? So
Right.
that's how I view it as, and why I'm so grateful that you were able to come on and chat with me about this,
Mm-hmm.
because we need more people putting good stuff out there. We just do. There's so
Right.
much negative stuff. There's so
Oh
much
yeah.
bad stuff.
So
And
much.
almost all of our field is. Almost all the
Mm-hmm.
stuff online is. In conservation biology, anything the sciences is just guilt trips out the freaking wazoo. The
Oh
world is
yeah.
ending. Everybody, might as well dig your grave now because it's not long before the world explodes. That's just like what we're
Yeah.
getting now.
Yeah, and it helps nothing. Like it doesn't
Nothing.
do anything. Like it's like yeah, that's why I'm all big about the climate positivity movement, because it's like there's good things that are happening. It's like, oh yeah, you want to inspire the next generation by telling them they're going to be dead in 10 years? Good luck. Like like it's like what are you doing with that? And it's yeah, and it's always putting the blame on the individual. And it's like, why? Like you're just going to make someone feel bad for existing? Like come on. Like that's it's not going to help anything.
Right.
Like ugh.
Yeah, and giving like real, like I said, like real call to actions. Like, what can you actually do? What is something that you can feel
Mhm.
good about? And putting
Right.
pressures on the big mega organizations and corporate organizations that,
Mhm.
and all, enough people put a pressure on them and they start to see a dip in their profits, you best believe they're going to listen. And
Right.
so it's just getting more voices out there for
Mhm.
that. It doesn't matter if someone has 100 followers or 100,000 followers. Like,
Exactly.
Put it out there. Put it out
Exactly.
there.
And yeah, and it's like, but it's also like have fun with it. Like that's the thing.
Right.
Like everyone is so fucking serious about it. And I'm like, man, like the reason like I don't know, the reason I keep doing social media is because like, yeah, I'll have this serious post where I'm like talking about like, imposter syndrome and like like, depressive attitudes in like graduate school and like the sciences and stuff. And then I'm like gonna do some stupid video where like I'm a detective, like who a detective biologist whose paper got swooped by some other asshole biologist because it's just stupid and it's fun and like I don't care but it's like because of that it's people are more likely because yeah no one ever wants to talk about doom and gloom all the time, but it's just like because I'm having fun with it, it's like it feels like a break almost. It's not like I have to be this serious person. I'm just me. I'm just doing whatever the hell I want to do. And if you are like a very serious person who wants to really tackle serious issues, that's awesome. Do that. But just be you. Just be you at the end of the day. Like most of the time, I'm a fool. So I want to act like a fool on social media.
I'm just picturing the one. I don't know. I think you've been in a couple of videos and like a blow up frog.
Yeah, but it's so stupid, and I love it. And people have started to call me Frog Lord. It's like it's become like an inside joke. Like someone just like messaged me. It's like, can I get some like, how can I get some good luck from the Frog Lord or something? And it was something weird, and like I responded with like, bring me 7 tadpoles and it shall be so. And it's like, what am I, it's like, what is this? This is so stupid. And that's when people are like, you are making an impact. You are like a communicator. And I'm like, bro, I just put on an inflatable frog suit and dance like every couple months. And it's like, like, but I think that's what makes it like an effective message as well. It's like, again, showing that there's human beings behind the screen, that biologists are humans that do stupid things. Like I have so much random frog like paraphernalia and stuff. Like everyone just sends me anything. Like I literally got a text from my roommate today, just like sending me some frog backpacks. I was like, hell yeah, I want to get them.
And like the silly one, I mean, we're talking about it right now. And now
Yeah.
someone who's listening might go on your profile to see this hilarious inflatable frog costume that you put on in some of your videos.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, oh my God, that's funny shit. I want to
Right.
follow. And then now they're
Right.
going to get your other content too. That might be a good call to
Exactly.
action. That might be a greater concept to explore. That might be connecting. Because you've posted some stuff where I'm
Mhm.
just like, man, that hit me.
Mm.
And then you and I even start chatting about it because I'll like tag you in a story and I'm like, oh my
Right.
God, like this hit me in the feels. And then we'll talk about it. And like that's
Right.
huge. I mean, for like you
Yeah.
said, building community and this is real
Right.
stuff we go through.
Right, and I also don't wanna make it seem like this is, like, completely random, like, everything I do is just, like, serendipitous, like, whatever I post. It's like, there's a lot of intention that goes into, like, stacking things in such a way so that I'm not just being, like, ultra depressing for, like, 2 months. It's like the frog outfit's a really good example because people are I'll get tagged for, like, a couple weeks after I post something with the frog. It's like, "You need to do this with the frog thing," and I'm like, "Yeah, but here's the deal, y'all. If I do it all the time, it won't be special." So, like,
Mm.
and I do it when I feel like everyone has forgotten about it. And then but yeah, so it's like there's a lot of intention in how I like stagger these things because to a degree, I almost want it to be like you click on a video and you don't know how you're gonna feel yet. You don't know if you're gonna feel happy, you don't know if you're gonna feel sad, but that brings you in because you don't know, because you don't know the vibe yet. You don't understand the emotion that's gonna go into it, and it's almost like a little surprise. And but you're gonna feel something, and that's what I want to capture with that. I mean, yeah, usually you can tell from the thumbnail, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's like, ah, God. Yeah, like there's a lot of intention, but it's all again, it's little tricks that I learned along the way. This wasn't I spent 6 months in social media boot camp learning all of these tricks, and now I unleash them on the world. I'm like, no, this has been years of like, oh, this color scheme works better. I'll start using it. Oh, using this type of video works really well, or this angle or this lighting works really well for that video. So I'll start doing it in my other ones. And then making my life easier. Like my carousel posts, I have a template that I use in Canva. All I do now is I just copy and paste that template, and I have something I can work off of. And it's just, I have the text in order. I know what color scheme I'm using. I know what the background's going to look like. Making my life easier and making it more efficient to make whatever the hell I want to make. Like there is, I mean, yes, it's planned. There's a lot less planning than I think people Like I don't have anything planned, right? I have like no reels in my draft. I have no carousels saved right now. Like I have nothing made for next week, but I'm gonna do that maybe tomorrow. I'm not sure. I'm going camping, so we'll see.
Maybe you'll have some ideas that'll hit you, when you're
Oh
out and
yeah.
about and just like
Oh yeah.
record.
Oh yeah. My favorite thing recently has been to like hang out with friends and without telling them, record a stupid real joke and just like wait for them to groan or hate it or something. And it's like I'm just waiting for one where like I say something really stupid and they just respond with Dillon, shut the fuck up already. Like I want that in a reel. I want that so badly in a reel.
And then I get to see it like pointing to your face, me just losing it. Like, yes, I got
Right?
it.
Right, because I've had some really like weird reels before. Like I remember, yeah, I met up with a friend from Tucson. And we did like a thirst trap reel. And I'm like, what the hell? Why am I doing this? I
I
have
saw that
never
one.
done this.
You're
Yeah, and
like
it's like,
shirtless and you like freaking drop it low. I saw that and I lost my shit.
right. And I was like, I left all of the laughs because like literally we could not record for more than 5 seconds without just like giggling because it's so stupid. So yeah, but that's like going back to I'm having fun with it. The content is, yeah, it's all related to being a biologist, weird stuff, but I do whatever I want at the end of the day.
Which I think is why, yeah, you've definitely got the community that you do because of that. I
Mhm.
mean,
Right.
no one knows what's coming.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and it's a good mix of humor and that, I mean, that's something for someone to consider too. Yeah, like
Mhm.
mix it up, try different things,
Yeah.
see what sticks. Like you don't always have to be
Mhm.
serious. You don't always have to have
Right.
humor. It's just a mix of
Right.
things and see how it goes. I mean, your community
Right.
will let you know.
Yeah, they will. They will. And it's like, yeah, I'm always looking through my posts. Like every week I'm looking through and like this one didn't do good. Why is it didn't do good? Was it the timing or was it the content? But like, hey, these are doing really good. I should start running down this chain a bit more. Like lately, people really seem to like when I make a reel about science misinformation and how to spot it. Well, great. I can easily do that. There's more I can make with that. So it's doing what you want, being aware of what works better and making that more of your content because yeah, you'll it's going down rabbit holes, basically. Just going down rabbit holes and letting yourself go down them.
Hmm. That's gorgeous. Yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
something is working really well, figure out why and then just keep going until it doesn't work anymore
Right.
and then mix it up.
Right.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's great advice. Oh my gosh. Yes. Everyone, check it out. Check out Dylan's stuff and then just go from there. He's super easy to get a hold of online as well. He's not like one
Mm.
of those people that are just like a faceless name in the DMs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that at all. So the transition, there's this one question that I absolutely love to dive in with everybody because again, this field isn't easy and we all go through a lot of stuff. What would you say has been your biggest struggle that either you're currently going through or that you've had to or that you've successfully overcome? But
Mhm.
what is that most defining moment in your path that you're like, "Damn, that was hard."
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always just been restarting like my life over and over and over again. It's like, okay, I went to like yeah, I went to undergrad. That was restarting. I had to move somewhere new, and then there for 4 years. But then it was halfway through, I did a study abroad for like 3 months. So that was had to get rid of my apartment because I couldn't afford an apartment. And I mean, money is also a very big struggle. That's definitely the undertone of all this. But yeah, so it was restarting that and trying to figure out, okay, well, where am I going to keep all my stuff? Where am I going to do this? Blah 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 blah. Then okay, cool, I finished that. Well, then I left again. I went abroad for 6 months. That was a restarting of what was my life. And then I literally like I was living in Texas, went to Belize for 6 months. I like went from Belize. I visited Canada for a couple weeks. Then I came back down to Texas for like 4 days just to pack up all my stuff and then drive out to California and start my life now in San Diego. And now I'm at the stage of like, well, I have like a year left or whatever, and I'm gonna have to restart my life again. Don't know where I'm gonna be. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And it's like, it is so exhausting to constantly be doing that. It's like, good luck trying to like hold on to a relationship while it's so hard to like plan something with someone and be like, I don't know where I'm going to be living in a year, like
Yeah.
if I'm going to be on the East Coast or the West Coast. It's like, and I'm just getting really tired of that. I'm getting like really tired of it. And that's you make sacrifices for whatever you're going to do in life. No matter what, you will make a sacrifice at some level. But I'm at sort of at this like turning point. I'm like, is this worth it to me? Because like right now, I absolutely love living in San Diego. I seriously love this area. I would love to make it work where I'm living here, but like a PhD opportunity isn't here for me. It just isn't here. So if I want to do that, I'd have to move. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm definitely taking a year off though, because I just need a year off. Like graduate school during a pandemic, man, fuck that. Like I don't want to like I don't want to just yeah, it's like I just did that. Let me go back into some shit for like 5 years. No,
Yeah,
no.
no.
So yeah, so I'm kind of struggling with that a lot. And also just like I mean, of course, wrapped up into that, do I want to stay in academia? Because there are so many problems with it. It's like just there's so many issues, and it's something I'm not sure if I really want if I need to be in it for what I want to do. It's like, if I follow this influencer creator path and sort of do my own research, because like the research I do now, I don't need any permits for. It's all data analysis. But I can so easily work with someplace. Like if I live in San Diego, I could volunteer with the museum and help them on their field research. Like I don't necessarily need the research to be my thing. I just need to be outside. I need to be doing something. So yeah, I'm at this turning point of, do I want to restart my life again? Go back into something where I'm not making any money and like always struggling. Like it's like ever since I started working, I haven't like as a human being started working. I've always had 2 to 3 jobs.
No, that's
Like if
alien.
not more. Yeah, and it's just like it's exhausting. It's like it's such a weird mentality where it's like I'm usually starting to work at like 6 a.m. or whatever because I'm very early riser, and then saying I need to make sure I don't work past 7 p.m. Like 13-hour days are like my baseline of like, yeah, I should cool it. It's like, what the hell am I doing? But yeah, so it's being overworked, restarting your life, not getting paid, and it's a lot to really take into account. It's actually been, I'm big on the transparency. I'm very big on I kind of hate it when someone gets into my DMs like, I really want to be a biologist. What is it like? And I'm like, you won't get paid. It kind of sucks. The grad school is tricky. Like just yesterday, I posted on my story about how I live in San Diego. My university pays me $1,000 a month to live. Which is actually less than they say I need to live based on their stuff. And I'm going to the food bank. It's like, that's a big reality of like many grad programs, of many stages of being a biologist, is not getting good pay. But you do it because you genuinely love the field. You love it. No matter how shitty it is, you still feel like it's worth it in some way. I just want it to be worth it more.
Yes.
That is where I'm at. Yeah, and just I just want to have some sense of stability in my life, like actually being able to work on being in an area and living there and actually forming connections, and not like, yeah, I have friends that I knew 3 years ago but I haven't spoken to because we we can't hang out anymore. We reconnect every few months via messaging or something, and like that is like the hard part about being a biologist. And every grad student I've talked to has felt this same way. It's just so tricky. There's so much uncertainty, and it's like, how can you really start your life when you don't even know what your life is going to look like in a year? Yeah.
Yeah, totally feel you. I had a similar life transition as well. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, the solution that I found for how I want to contribute the world also happens to pay more. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully you'll find that as well. Mine is conservation travel, sustainable travel,
Yeah.
because most of
Right.
those are, for-profit businesses. And
Mm-hmm.
ironically, I feel like I've done more good for the world in these for-profit businesses than the nonprofits I used to work for. So
Right.
there's like a whole bunch of layers to unfold there, but I get it. I completely get it. It's a struggle. And
Mm-hmm.
then, I mean, now my biggest thing is, since it was such a struggle and I did work so many jobs, but yet my degrees are so expensive, now I have a lot of student loan debt, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah.
So don't know when that's being paid off, but we're working on it, It's
Yep. Yep.
just everyone's like, when are you gonna have kids? I'm like, I don't know, when my student loan debt that's gonna cost the same amount as a child is gone. Like, I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
Maybe then we'll think about it. But yeah, no, I completely understand. And yeah, it's just being a biologist now and being in this field now, I think is just a little harder than what it used to be from
Yeah.
everything that I've heard from previous
Oh,
generations.
for sure. For sure.
But
For sure.
but that's okay. We'll make it through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
You'll monetize something in some way, shape, or form, and you have time to figure it
Exactly.
out. I mean, you don't
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, that's a beautiful thing about at least going through that in this stage, like, you don't have a family you're trying to support, like, luckily, you can just,
Right.
like, truly focus on you and what you
Hmm.
need, and then hopefully all the good dominoes will fall in
Right.
place
Right.
from there.
I know, exactly. And like I'm a big believer in inertia. Like if you're feeling like things are going your way, continue it. Make sure you're continuing it, making sure you're just keeping that momentum going. And that's what I feel like right now. Like I feel like there's a lot of good going on in my life, and I'm just keeping it going. So,
Well, on that note too, what piece of advice or just something because you have the platform right now. You have this platform to say whatever you want and you
mm,
have a moment to speak directly to whoever is listening. What do you want them to walk away with?
ooh, that's a good one. I mean, I'm always gonna say like, you know, always work on doing what you love. Like if your current love is going out into the field and looking for snakes and salamanders, pursue that. If your current love is creating content and wanting to make, education materials that are really going to create impact, do that. But whenever you are trying to find your passion and trying to do what you love, make sure you can do it in a way that still supports you. Because no matter how much passion, no matter how much love you have, if you can't eat, uh, there's not much you can do. So there's always a way to make money from your passion. There's always a way to make a living. There's always a way to continue doing what you want to do, but just know that you need to find that. And I think that means sometimes taking sacrifices. I'm a believer that you don't need to have a lot of money. I am like, I've been broke so many times, like broke, like wasn't sure if I could make it to the airport to leave the country because I only had like $6 in my bank account and the taxi would have cost seven.
Yeah.
Like that's happened to me several times. But I always did something that I loved, and I always said yes to things that even if they were going to be scary or tricky or I wasn't sure if I could do it, I said yes anyways and tried. And I failed a lot of times. I failed so many times. It's insane how many times I failed. And I just said, okay, cool, gonna keep going. And that's what I think like pursuing your passion is really about. It's about pursuing it and keep trying to find a way to make it your living, trying to make it your career, even when it's tricky, even when you feel like you're broke, even when it's just everything is sort of pushing against you. It's just trying to find a way to alter that narrative and make it your own. And saying that I want to be a biologist. That's what I'm passionate about. I like biology. I like educating. I like research. I love science. That doesn't mean I have to be in academia to do that.
Right.
There isn't one path. There are so many ways to monetize what you're doing. There's so many ways to make a living off of what you're doing. And I think that's what I mean by find a way to support yourself. And it doesn't have to be the way that you think it is. I would not even be considering the possibility of being like a creator biologist, like hybrid. And that's how I make a living. But now that's where I'm thinking. That's honestly what that is what I'm pursuing. And it may fail. I don't know. Like I don't know. Like, it could totally fail, and that's cool. That's awesome because I've learned so much because of it. I've propelled other parts of myself, of my career, of my ethos, of who I am as a human being because I pursued that. So pursue what you're passionate about. Be open to wherever that passion leads you, but try to figure out a way that to support yourself so that you can do what you're passionate about.
Mm, that's so good. That's beautiful. Could not agree
Thanks. I
more.
practiced that for months. Like I thought of it, like it seemed totally like serendipitous, but I was like, no, 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 no. I wrote that down and I memorized it. I have it up on the screen right now. I don't even know what I have some like Dungeons and Dragons shit on my screen right now.
Oh my god. Some Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, good God, you're so much fun too. So you've shared so much with me, and I am so grateful for all of this. And I know that you're going to make a great impact on so many people. And if somebody wants to get in contact with you, let's say that something you said really resonated, what is the best way?
Honestly, nowadays it's Instagram is the best way to contact me. Because I mean, even on Instagram, there's like my email link. You can just it's like my personal email. Like I don't care if someone emails me. I'm usually going to respond. But yeah, Instagram, Dillon the Biologist. It's by far the easiest way to reach me, and I'm pretty good about DMs, even if it's like too many at times. I'm like, it may take me a day or two. Just I will almost always respond. As long as you're not an asshole. Like,
Those come.
Yeah.
That comes with the territory. And just be like,
Yeah.
I think someone, like, I don't know, like a highlight of a podcast episode the other day. They said something like, shut up or something, like on the post. I'm like, who the hell are you? Like, okay, like,
Right.
delete, asshole. Like, shut up. Are you serious? But
Yeah.
I guess it just comes with the territory. So
Mhm.
awesome, Dillon. Well, this has been so much fun, and I'm so grateful that you spent your morning with me, and I cannot wait to get.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Hey, thanks again for listening to this episode of Rewildology. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button to never miss a future episode. Do you have a cool environmental organization, travel story, or research that you'd like to share? Let me know at rewildology.com. Until next time, friends, together we will rewild the planet.